for a lot of people to say, oh, well, Bitcoin's a little volatile. Yeah, it's going to be a little volatile. It's still growing. It's still new. It has the potential to take over and destroy all governments and central banks on Earth. And as it does, the volatile things will be the fiat currencies, which will be in full collapse mode in the next couple of years.
Start investing in gold and silver at sdbullion.com today and join over 35,000 precious metals investors who have made the switch to the lowest gold and silver prices in the industry. SD Bullion recently claimed a spot on the prestigious Inc. 500, making them one of the fastest growing bullion companies in the United States. With low bullion prices and over-the-top customer service, SD Bullion is setting the standard for precious metals transactions. Visit www.sdbullion.com today. Start saving on every precious metals purchase you make.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with silverdoctors.com, and back with us today is Jeff Berwick from the Dollar Vigilante. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I'd like to first discuss about how China is outlawing initial coin offerings, and just a couple days ago announced that they're going to be shutting down cryptocurrency exchanges. What is your take on this, Jeff?
Well, first of all, that's pretty big news. You're right, because a lot of the volume of Bitcoin comes from China, although that has been decreasing more and more over time in the last few months, even really, actually, Japan and South Korea have pretty much caught up to China or even surpassed China in terms of volume. So if this happened, say, a year ago or 6 months ago, it would have been quite a bit more of a big deal. But now China has not been, so many other countries have been growing in their Bitcoin transaction volume that it's not quite as big of a deal. But it's still a big deal. That's a big country with a lot of people and a lot of people who want to get their money out of that country. And that's why the Chinese government wants to shut it down, because they have capital controls. The U.S. has capital controls as well called FATCA, but they're not as direct. In China, they're more direct, and you can only take a certain amount of money outside of the country every year. So if you make money in China, and a lot of people are making money there because they have quite a bit more capitalism in general than the U.S. or most Western countries now. They have less taxation, less regulation, and because of that, it's been booming for the last more than a decade. And so a lot of people there have a lot of money now, and they want to get it out, and there's capital controls. So, of course, Bitcoin makes total sense, and a lot of people have been transferring their Chinese yuan into Bitcoin and then being able to get outside the country. And because of that, the Chinese government said, well, we can't have all our slaves getting their money outside of our control where we can't steal it from them, called taxation. And so they decided to try to shut down the Bitcoin exchanges. But one thing to point out is China is nowhere near as people there aren't so bootlicking or so much slave-like as in the U.S. So they don't just necessarily listen to the government, whatever the government says. In fact, if the cops ever really accost people there in China, you can see it all the time on the internet. The entire town goes and beats up or kills the cops. So these people are not fully enslaved like people in the U.S. are today, where they just do anything the government tells them. So it will be interesting. China did actually banned Bitcoin once before in 2012, so you can see how well that went. But we'll see what happens. But it is a fairly big deal. But already Bitcoin has recovered from it. Bitcoin today is over $4,000. When you add Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, is $4,500. So we're pretty close to the highs again already. So I always call Bitcoin sort of the honey badger of money. It just don't care about your government regulations. It just keeps moving on.
So how does this kind of thing even happen? Because, people say Bitcoin is kind of decentralized. It's not really controlled by any government. So how does a government like China control Bitcoin?
It doesn't. That's my point. That's why Bitcoin is the honey badger of money. You can't just decree Bitcoin is not allowed. That's the old world. That's the old world of like the 20th century, where governments killed, 500 million people of their own people, not including all their wars, which killed other hundreds of millions of people. So that was, that's the whole world of government. It's just violence and killing people, and it's horrible. And it's luckily that's mostly behind us now. And thanks to technology and thanks to things like Bitcoin, we don't have to just listen to them as much anymore. And of course, Bitcoin is just essentially math. It's just a bunch of numbers in the cloud, which it doesn't even have a central office or anything like that. So there's no way to really just shut down Bitcoin. You'd have to actually basically shut off the internet for everybody and shut off the power pretty much for everybody in order to do it. And so that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin. So what happened in China is they didn't ban Bitcoin. You can't ban Bitcoin. It's like me saying, I just banned Bitcoin. Everyone would be like, okay, we don't care. And like Jeff Berwick says, you can't use Bitcoin. It's like, I don't care. The only reason some people care when it's government is because they have so many people and so many slavish order followers who will come around and kidnap you and put you into a cage. And for that reason, people should wake up and say, let's get rid of government. We're all enslaved by them. There's nothing valuable that government ever does for us. They just enslave us. But you can't ban Bitcoin. So what China did was they said, if we catch people trading or allowing exchange for ICOs, which are initial coin offerings, which are sort of like the new style venture capital of the internet, and it's not going to go away at all. It just people in China will have to be more careful about how they do it, and sort of like you just use a VPN. It's sort of like when China banned YouTube and China banned Twitter. People in China are still on YouTube and Twitter. So government is just mostly just a criminal organization, and we need to get rid of it immediately. And we are through technology very quickly getting rid of it. But in their last gasp, they're going to try to force people using violence to not do things. And for the most part, hopefully people just don't listen to them.
So do you see other countries moving to, quote unquote, ban Bitcoin as well?
Well, again, China did not ban Bitcoin. You can't ban it. You could say a government could come out and say, if we catch our slaves trading in Bitcoin, we will kidnap you and put you in a cage. And if you try to escape, we'll kill you, which is what all governments do. And that's the only thing government really does is extort and enslave people. So China didn't do that. They could say, like the Chinese government could come out and say, yeah, if we catch any Chinese citizen or slave who gets caught with a Bitcoin application on their phone, we're going to kidnap you and put you in a cage. They could do that, but a lot of people would probably still have Bitcoin. They'd just be very careful about how they held it, which is good. And so they didn't really ban Bitcoin. What they did was they said, if we catch people on exchanges allowing exchange of these ICOs, that we will kidnap them and put them in a cage. So that's mostly just going to, a lot of these entrepreneurs in China are probably going to be moving to Hong Kong and other places like that now to get away from that sort of heinous, tyrannical government intervention into the free market. But no, they did not ban Bitcoin. And even if they did, Bitcoin would still exist. This is one thing that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of the gold bugs and silver bugs and stuff like that. And I'm a huge one. I've been one of the biggest gold bugs around. I'm still have more of my wealth in gold than I do in Bitcoin. And I probably will have it that way for a long period of time. But a lot of people seem to think that, the government's going to ban Bitcoin at some point and then it'll be worthless. It's like, no. China essentially has banned Bitcoin in the past. They've just come out and they banned ICOs. They've said to Bitcoin exchanges, this is the other thing they've done, that you can't, you have to shut down or we'll kidnap you and put you in a cage. And we'll see if they actually do that. Hopefully a lot of the exchanges in China do what they did in the past and just don't listen to them. But even if they do, that does not mean that people in China won't have access to Bitcoin. As long as they have access to the internet, they have access to Bitcoin. And like I said, Bitcoin doesn't care about your rules, your government rules. Anyone in the world could say, you can't use Bitcoin. Bitcoin don't care. It's just math. It's just numbers. And that's why it's funny that a lot of gold bugs and silver bugs out there are so against Bitcoin, because the main reason that a lot of gold bugs are out there is because they realize that central banks are heinous. They inflate the money supply of fiat currencies, which shouldn't even exist in the first place. But the only reason they exist is because of governments. And a lot of gold bugs are very anti-government. They're very at least wary or knowledgeable that the government is an enemy and not a friend. And so to me, the fact that a lot of gold bugs don't like Bitcoin, and not a lot, there's actually only just a few left, really, in my opinion, but some of them still don't like it. It's crazy. Bitcoin is another addition into the arsenal of freedom for human beings to have independence over their own lives and over their own money. And Bitcoin is an improvement in many ways on the banking system. A lot of gold bugs don't realize that as well. They think that Bitcoin is just a currency or a money. Sort of as gold and silver can be and is at certain points in history, but it's also a banking system. So that's why Barack Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winning president, didn't have one day of peace his entire presidency, said last year that Bitcoin is like having a Swiss bank account in your pocket. And it's actually better than that, because if you have a Swiss bank account, the Swiss bank, for whatever reason, can decide to shut down your account. When you have Bitcoin, no one can decide but you, as long as you hold your private keys, and you can memorize your private keys. So you can hold $1 million or $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in your own brain. This is incredibly powerful stuff, and gold bugs and silver bugs out there better wake up. They've already missed the boat a lot, and I've been saying this for years. They'll continue. Bitcoin hits $1,000. I'm like, gold bugs, look at this. No, this is bad. It's a scam. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. I don't know when they're going to eventually wake up, but this is a addition to our arsenal of freedom and completely complementary to gold and silver, and not any sort of a threat to gold and silver. silver. It's an addition to the usability of things like gold and silver in this digital age.
Now, some people would argue that Bitcoin is too volatile to be money. So in your view, how can something that has, so many drastic price swings ever be used as a store of value and a medium of exchange?
Yeah, this is one of the comments that I sort of laugh at. Bitcoin was launched in 2009. No one even knew what it was until around 2013. I knew about it in 2011. I was lucky. I'm so involved in Austrian economics and anarcho-capitalism, and that's where Bitcoin came from that sort of a culture or group. So we knew about it. I knew about it in 2011, but most people didn't even hear about it until 2013. Probably your average person didn't really hear about it until 2015. Now most people have at least heard of it. Most people still don't own it or know anything about it, and we're 2017, so we're 8 years into it, but really only a couple years into it. And yeah, it's going to be volatile in its early stages. Bitcoin at right now has a market cap of $66 billion. If you look at the total market cap of the US dollar, I forget what the number was, but it's well into the trillions. I forget exactly 10 trillion or something along those lines. So Bitcoin's like, not even barely a percentage point on sort of the world fiat currency market and gold. You probably know better than me. What's the total market cap of all mined gold? It's 7 trillion or something like that.
I'd have to look that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge amount anyway. So it's, like 100 times bigger than the current Bitcoin market. If I'm right on that 7 trillion number with 60 billion on Bitcoin right now. So it's a very, very small market and it's growing dramatically. And so, yeah, you're going to have some major volatility when you have a small growing market with a lot of things going on, like governments trying to ban it, stuff like that. There's going to be lots of ups and downs. But eventually, if Bitcoin does become more and more used amongst more people, it will become less volatile. That's just how these things are. As Bitcoin will have a market cap, and as more and more people use it, the value of Bitcoin will go up because it's simply supply and demand. And there's only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be created. And because of that, it's a limited supply. So as there's more demand, the value of Bitcoin goes up. And I've done the math to say that if Bitcoin ever replaces something like the US dollar in global international trade, then it would be worth around, in today's dollars, around $1 million of Bitcoin. I'm not saying it's going there, but I'm saying if that happens, that's about what the value would be just based on the math. And that's just pure math. These are just numbers. And so you look at Bitcoin today at 4,000, it could go to $1 million if it becomes used as money. If it does, that will have a valuation. I'm just trying to do the math off the top of my head here. 4,000, let's just say it goes up 100 times. So it'd go from 60 billion, it'd be about 6 trillion. Yeah, so 6 trillion. So it'd be around what the value of gold would be if it became money used across the world. And then you wouldn't see these massive volatility, because when you have a market cap of the entire value of it all worth 6 trillion, which is around what all the gold in the world is worth, then it just doesn't move as much. And that's why gold is less volatile than Bitcoin. And that's why things like the US dollar and things like that in the past have been less volatile than things like gold, because they have a bigger market cap. But the US dollar is collapsing right now. It's having its worst year since the 80s. So far, year to date, from January to September, it's the worst year for the US dollar since, I think, 1986. Our analyst says this is the beginning of the collapse of the dollar. This will happen over the next 3 or 4 years, the absolute collapse of the dollar. So we're going to see, and so a lot of people out there will say, well, why would I want Bitcoin? It goes up and down a lot. Well, I don't know if anyone noticed, the British pound in the last year or two has gone up and down a lot. We're talking spikes of 20, 30% overnight. During the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of the fiat currencies, including the Australian dollar, went down 30, 40% in a couple of days, really. So these things will happen. The US dollar will go to zero at some point. This is just fact. This is just math. This is baked in the cake. So for a lot of people to say, oh, well, Bitcoin's a little volatile. Yeah, it's going to be a little volatile. It's still growing. It's still new. It has the potential to take over and destroy all governments and central banks on Earth. And as it does, the volatile things will be the fiat currencies, which will be in full collapse mode in the next couple of years.
Before we let you go, I just wanted to address one last topic about Bitcoin. Some people speculate that it's, a globalist plot to track everybody. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, this is something that I've seen more and more lately. As the people who didn't like Bitcoin before used to say, oh, it's just, it's Beanie Babies like Peter Schiff's and other people like that. And now they kind of realize, okay, this is kind of serious. This is kind of real. So now we got to say, okay, this must be a globalist plot, because how else would they allow it to happen? And this is something I've seen a lot. Now, I'm probably the biggest anti-government, anti-globalist person out there that I know of in terms of being outwardly outspoken and doing everything I I can to destroy governments and central banks. And I don't think this is a globalist plot. I think this came out of the free market. If you look at Satoshi Nakamoto's writings, and actually I wrote the foreword to the book of Satoshi, if you want to read that book, it's all of his writings as he was creating Bitcoin. Incredibly fascinating stuff about the creation of money, the Austrian economics and things like that. And, this was not someone from the government writing this. This was not a CIA guy. These guys are mostly morons for the most part, CIA people and stuff like that. They're just order followers conducting incredibly evil acts against humanity, but they're not incredibly ingenuitive and not very creative. So they don't create these sort of things. So the market created it. The government can't stop it. Now the central banks can't stop it. So a lot of people say, oh, it must be created by the government and central banks because it's going fairly well. It's like, no, this is actually an evolution. It's not a revolution because we're not revolving back to anything. This is an evolution in not only money and banking, but humanity. This is a change of the game, changing of the guard. The old violent, controlling, tyrannical systems like government and central banks are going away now because of technology. And people need to wake up to that. So the idea that government created this is insane because this is so anti-government. I can't even begin to describe how anti-government Bitcoin is. And even Barack Obama said that just last year when he said Bitcoin's like a Swiss bank account in your pocket. He said, how are we going to conduct tax enforcement with Bitcoin? It's like, yeah, how are you going to do that, you criminal? You can't. So it's great. It's awesome. And one of the other things that a lot of people will say is, they're going to create their own cryptocurrency, which of course they're going to do. They've already talked about this. So of course they're going to do that. And so Bitcoin's sort of laying the path, the groundwork for them to be able to do this, getting people used to using cryptocurrencies. Like, well, yeah, in a sense it is, but that's not Bitcoin's fault that the government is going to now try to copy Bitcoin. And if the government comes out and tries to do a copy of Bitcoin, they've already started. The UK British central bank has already started its own cryptocurrency, they call it. It's so much less valuable in every single way than Bitcoin in terms of they can print as much of it as they want. It's not decentralized, it's centralized. So it has none of the benefits of Bitcoin. The only benefit it has is it's digital. And so as people realize that, and as the governments and central banks come out with their really horrible, really stupid cryptocurrencies, sure, some people might use them, but most people will continue to use the better money, which is things like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that aren't controlled by the central banks. And we'll see what happens after that. But I think they won't have much success because of that. So people who have been really out there, who are really sort of like the gold bugs, who are really anti-Bitcoin, really need to snap out of it. This is what the gold bugs have been waiting for their whole life. Now, I think the gold bugs in general are a little bit angry because they haven't seen the upside on gold and silver as much yet. And we will see that, in my opinion. I think this is just starting now. And we won't see any sort of gains like we saw in Bitcoin, of course, because Bitcoin started from zero. So Bitcoin's been amazing. But I think a lot of it's just sort of jelly. A lot of people are just jealous, and get out of that. That's a horrible mindset to be in, to be jealous. This is what gold bugs really want. They want to get back to a sound money being currency, and they want it to be gold and silver, and that's fine. I'd be totally fine with that. But I think in the digital age, there's probably going to be some other options as well, like Bitcoin and stuff like that. So this is exactly what a lot of the gold bugs want. So a lot of the gold bugs know that central banks are heinous and horrible, and Bitcoin's going to help get rid of the central banks. So they should be at least open-minded to it. And I see in your comment section down below, there's a lot of just, anger and, jealousy and all this kind of stuff. People let it go. We're all on the same team. If you're into gold and silver, you're probably in it for the same reasons that I like Bitcoin. And I'm also, as I pointed out, I love gold and silver. I've got more of it than I have of Bitcoin because I see it as being more secure and a longer term store of value than Bitcoin, which is brand new. Anything could happen with Bitcoin. We're still in the very nascent stages of a new currency here right now. I'm not going to put all my assets into something so brand new. Anything could happen. So we're all on the same team, and people should just wake up to it and get into it. This is moving everything forward that the gold bugs would ever dream of.
All right. Well, Jeff Berwick, thank you so much for your time today. People can find you on dollarvigilante.com. Any last thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, I would just let people know, just check us out. We're on your side. I was a huge gold bug. I still am. I still tell people, I tell I think our portfolio at the Dollar Vigilante, when we advise people, is well over 50% of your assets in gold and silver related assets. So well more, I think cryptocurrency, we say 15%. So we're gold and silver guys. We love it. So if you want, just check it out, dollarvigilante.com. We're also on YouTube almost every day. And if you just want to learn about cryptocurrencies, just go to dollarvigilante.com/bank. I've got a 4-video video tutorial, teach you all about why the cryptocurrencies are important. At the very end, I'll even send you, if you accept our offer, $50 worth of your very first Bitcoin directly from me, because I want to get everyone into it. Because the sooner that we get everyone into it, the sooner we can get rid of governments and central banks and have peace and prosperity on Earth like we've never known it.
Once again, Jeff Berwick, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.